I've got beans to can today. Me and Matt have been breaking up beans, and we've got some cannons of beans to do. First, I'm going to make us some breakfast before I get started on the beans, on the actual cannon. And I'm going to start out with bacon. So we love bacon, grew up eating bacon. I might like bacon better than sausage. I don't know. It's hard to get really good sausage, it seems like these days. But anyway, I'm going to do bacon today. Now, I always fried my bacon on top of the stove. That's how Granny did it when I was growing up. About 4 or 5 years ago, my friend Ginger told me about bacon, doing the bacon in the oven, putting it actually in the oven, and that way you could kind of put it in there and forget about it. So I started doing it that way, and I really like it. It seems like it doesn't make as big of a mess. It does pop in the oven, so maybe it's just that I'm not seeing the mess as much as I would be on top of the stove. But it's just so much easier to put it in there, and then while you're doing other stuff, not worry about turning it over. You can save your bacon grease still. If you need to use a pan with a lip on it, and that way it ponds up in there. You can still pour it out and save it. You can still pour it in a pan and make bacon gravy if you wanted to do that. Since I started doing it like this, I've noticed that other people do too. And a lot of people say they use a rack, and that way the grease can drip off the bacon into the pan, but I've never used a rack. I think in the beginning Ginger told me to use parchment paper, and I did that for a few times, but then I just quit doing that and I just put it in the pan. As far as the temperature, Ginger probably told me what temperature to use, but I don't really remember. So sometimes if I'm not doing biscuits, like maybe I'm making BLTs or something, I put the oven on about 400 and I just put it in there immediately, so it's in there while it's coming to heat. This morning I'm making biscuits, and I was doing a few other things, so it's already come to heat, so it's at 450 for the biscuits. But the main thing is you just need to watch it and keep an eye on it. It's like it takes it a few minutes and then all of a sudden it's done, kind of like it does on the top of the stove, the same way. Some people just leave it and don't turn it over, and I've done that, but sometimes I try to hurry mine up, so I get it out and turn it over to the other side and then put it back in. So I'm going to put the bacon in, and then I'm going to whip up the biscuits. So since there's only Matt and me today, I'm just going to do a cup of self-rising flour. And I have a recipe for biscuits that I will link to, a video about it, and then I'm just going to pour in some cream, heavy whipping cream. And some more. To move my green beans out of the way. Some flour. Ooh, making a mess. I always make a mess when I cook, though. I suppose since I'm the one cleaning it up, it's okay. So I don't roll my biscuits out, but you certainly could. I just use my hands. Granny just pinches hers off and makes them each little biscuit in her hand, is the way that she does it. And the thickness, of course, is totally personal preference. A lot of people in Appalachia love what they call cat biscuits, cat head biscuits, because they get really big. I don't like that inside doughy part, so I don't make mine that big. You can use a cookie sheet or a baking pan to do your biscuits on. If I do that, I don't even grease it. I just put them on there. Today, though, I'm using a cast iron skillet, so I did grease it a little bit. So now I'm going to get my gravy ready. Today, I'm making chocolate gravy instead of like bacon grease gravy or sausage gravy or red eye gravy. So I have a recipe that makes a full pan of chocolate gravy the way Granny made it, but today I'm just making a small amount for me and Matt. So that's 2 tablespoons of just whatever flour. It can be all-purpose plain flour, or it can be self-rising, doesn't matter. And 2 tablespoons of cocoa and 3 tablespoons of sugar. And then I'm just going to start adding water to it. And I like my gravy on the thin side, so I probably use more water than most folks, or more milk, whichever, if I'm making milk gravy. But I will link to that video so you can see how I make chocolate gravy if I'm making it for all of us, instead of just for me and Matt. And we're just going to let it, just like any other gravy, let it come to a boil and simmer until it's thick. Okay, so my bacon is done. Get it out, and you can see the way the kind of the crispy parts and the bacon grease pools in the bottom. So you can definitely pour that into your bacon grease container if you're someone like me that saves it, or if you were making milk gravy, you could go ahead and pour this in a pan, scrape up all those little bits like that. They add so much flavor to your gravy, and have a really great pan of gravy. So it's beginning to thicken up. While it continues to cook, I'm going to get my pan ready to do our eggs in. We're going to have some fried eggs, and I'm also going to cut up some other things to go with breakfast. So in the summertime, something we love to have with breakfast and with most meals is a tomato fresh from our garden. This is one of those lovely Cherokee purples that just have so much flavor. And I don't know what it is about a tomato that just gives such a brightness to eggs. Eggs and biscuits just go so very well with it. So I'm going to cut us some slices of that we can enjoy. And this is one of our little cantaloupes. The ones that we grow, the melons, they do end up being small, but they're still really good. So I'm going to cut this one. We've been eating them to go with, for me and Matt, just to go with breakfast. Again, cantaloupe seems to go especially well. My chickens love those seeds, so I'm going to make sure to give those to the chickens. Their chicken bowl that we keep for them. Put those out in it. These are so tiny, you could just about eat them just out with a spoon. They're so tender, but I will peel them for us. I love to put salt on my cantaloupe. I've heard a lot of people love to put pepper. And this variety that we grow is called a Minnesota midget, and when I first started growing it, I've been growing it for quite a few years now, I thought, well, if it would grow in Minnesota, surely it would grow here on my north side of the mountain where I don't get as much sun. And they do pretty good for us. They're all small like this, but that's okay. They do produce a lot. Now, that will be tasty. Biscuits are ready. Some butter, fresh blackberry jelly, Matt, it's ready.
Forgot about that.
It won't take long. We've done the hard part. The hard part's picking and breaking up. Easy part's canning.
Well, I really wanted cereal, but this will do.
Oh, you didn't want cereal. So when Matt and I first met, how many years ago? Over 30?
About 150.
No, it ain't been 150. I told him about chocolate gravy, or maybe the first time he ate it at Granny and Pap's, I can't remember, but he said it was, or he seen it at Granny and Pap's, he said it was an abomination. Now look at him.
I did say that.
Yes.
And I've had to eat crow since then.
Yeah, you had to eat crow. Jelly?
Yeah.
That's fresh blackberry.
Wow.
Was what was left over from my last run.
Man, that bib canned beans, I may have to take a nap.
So while Matt thought that chocolate gravy was an abomination, I grew up on it. Granny made it for me my whole life. I don't really remember the boys or Pat much liking it, but me and Granny adored it. We loved it. And she learned from her mother, Granny Gazzy. Now, chocolate gravy is a real Appalachian dish for sure, but there's lots of different ways to make it. So the way that I make it, the way that Granny made it, it's more like a thickness, it puts you in mind of pudding more. And then there's people like Ginger that taught me how to make the bacon. Her family, they make it more like a syrup. So hers is really good. I mean, you could put it on ice cream, cake, whatever. It's so good. But I love what I grew up on too, so that's what I make. But there are different kind of ways of doing chocolate gravy. Granny told me the way that we make it, she always, when they were growing up, she just thought it was a special treat when Granny Gazzy made it. And then as she got grown and married, she realized she made it on the days that maybe they didn't have enough meat to make, if they had bacon or sausage or something, to have that kind of gravy. So it was a cheap way, it was a cheap meal to feed them. So if you had enough flour for bread, for biscuits, and then you had, the gravy doesn't take any kind of grease, and it doesn't take any milk, it just took water, so it was kind of cheap way to feed them. So she said likely they ate that when they didn't have much else to eat. But it's funny how those kind of things, maybe, I've told the story before, so many people that said when they grew up, a lot of times all they had was cornbread, maybe cornbread and milk or something, and they even swore they'd never eat that again once they were grown, once the better times got there. But then they ended up wanting that same meal from childhood. So I hope that you enjoyed coming along with me as I cook breakfast for me and Matt. I've got to get me some of that wonderful tomato and the cantaloupe. I don't know if I want any jelly or not. I may wait on that before I get any jelly. Make me a jelly biscuit or save it for later for a snack. But I hope you enjoyed seeing our breakfast. We've got to go get this done and can our beans. We hope you have a great day. We hope, as always, that you would drop back by often to help us celebrate Appalachia.